Free audio post-production by alphonic.com.
On cold winter nights in the Grand Est region of France, particularly in Alsace and Lorraine, there's a name whispered with unease. Not a creature, not a spirit, but a man. A cruel, damned soul whose legacy became darker in death than it ever was in life. His name was Hans Trapp, and the stories say he still walks the forests and mountain roads near the ancient Alsace range. Not as a man of flesh and bone anymore, but as something twisted, ravenous, and hungry. Tonight, we're going to explore the legend of Hans Trapp, the myths, the history, and the terrifying tale parents still tell their children to this day. So settle close to the fire, because this one has claws. Before he became a walking nightmare of French folklore, Hans Trapp began as a real man, a noble, a wealthy landowner, a figure of power during the late Middle Ages. His real name is believed to have been Hans von Trotha, a knight born around 1450. Von Trotha was clever, ambitious, and ruthless. Over the years, he expanded his property, wealth, and influence, sometimes legally, sometimes by force. His growing power put him at odds with the church, more specifically with a local abbot whose land bordered his own. A long feud erupted between them, and von Trotha, being both vindictive and inventive, chose a very dramatic way to end it. He built a dam. Not for water, not for crops, not for progress, but to starve the monastery of the river that sustained it. When the church complained to the ruling authorities, von Trotha wouldn't back down. He opened the dam suddenly, flooding the monastery's land and destroying the crops, buildings, and livelihoods. To say he wasn't subtle would be an understatement. The church retaliated, not with force, but with politics. By 1496, Hans von Trotha was dragged before higher powers, accused of not just defiance, but heresy, sorcery, and even consorting with demons. True or not, his reputation was destroyed. Pope Innocent VIII excommunicated him. Locals began whispering that he'd become something worse than a criminal. Some said he practiced dark magic. Some said the devil visited him at night. Some claimed that he sacrificed animals, or worse. And when Hans finally died, the church did not bury his name. It cursed it. But death wasn't the end of his story. It was only the beginning. After Hans von Trotha's death, strange things began happening near his former estate. Locals claimed to see a tall figure wandering the hills at night, a gaunt man with ragged clothing and straw bundled into his sleeves, hood, and legs, like a scarecrow that learned to walk. Some called him Der Bachmann, the Buckman. Others named him the Black Knight, but the name that endured was Hans Trapp. Over time, the legend evolved. Stories say he wandered the countryside, starving, always starving, but not for bread or meat or warmth, but for human flesh. In the earliest retellings, he targeted the lonely, the foolish, or the curious, anyone who strayed too far into the forest, especially near Mount Trapp or the ruined castles around Wessenberg. Later, the story shifted. Hans Trapp became a Christmas-time figure. But unlike St. Nicholas, he did not reward. He punished. Children who misbehaved weren't given coal. They were given to Hans. There's one story told repeatedly in Alsace. The story that cements Hans Trapp as a monster, not in life, but in death. It begins on a bitterly cold winter night. Hans, thin as a bone and twisted with hunger, wandered the snow-covered roads near the edge of the village, his body no longer human-looking at all. Tall, unnaturally long limbs, straw poking out of every joint, a wooden mask nailed over his ruined face. Some versions say the mask hid a deformity. Others say no face remained beneath it at all. As he walked, the frost-covered branches snapped around him, not because he stepped on them, but because animals fled in his presence. He was not alive. He was not dead. He was something in between. Hans watched the village from the tree line. Lights were glowing in the windows. Laughter spilled out into the night. Tables were filled with roasted meat, bread, wine, and sweets. His hunger sharpened. His rage deepened. And then he saw movement. A young boy, maybe 10 years old, ran into the snow to bring more firewood inside. He was alone, vulnerable, and human. Hans crouched, though his spine cracked loudly when he did, and stalked the boy in silence. The boy stacked wood into his arms, humming a song from inside the house. He never noticed Hans until his shadow fell across the snow. The boy looked up and froze. Hans stood towering above him, straw-covered, skeletal, and unmoving. The wooden mask's carved mouth wore a jagged grin. The boy screamed. Hans lunged. Some versions say he dragged the boy into the forest, kicking and crying. Others say the boy never had time to scream at all. But all versions agree. Hans found a clearing, built a fire, and sharpened a large wooden stake. He had planned to roast the boy like meat. And just before Hans could place him on the spit, a blinding light split the sky. A figure entered the clearing, St. Nicholas himself, and struck Hans down. The boy was returned home, alive but forever traumatized. Hans Trapp, they say, was bound to St. Nicholas and cursed to travel with him forever as punishment for those well and fully on the naughty list. In some parts of France today, Hans Trapp appears during St. Nicholas festivals, much like Krampus in Alpine folklore in Nacht in Germany. Children line the streets, lights glow, music plays, and then suddenly, bells clatter, chains drag across the cobblestone, and a towering straw-covered figure storms through the crowd. He carries a switch, not a gift sack. His boots stomp, his voice growls, and every child, even the brave ones, fall silent. Hans Trapp doesn't hand out sweets. He doesn't smile. He watches, he judges, and he reminds them, be good, or he will return for them. Like many winter legends, Hans Trapp's story was shaped by time. Parents used it to keep children obedient. The church used it to condemn the unrighteous. Villagers used it to make sense of fear. Fear of hunger, fear of winter, and fear of things lurking in the forest. Yet the most unsettling part of Hans Trapp's legend is this. Unlike demons or ancient spirits, Hans Trapp started as a man. Not a beast, but a man whose cruelty lived long enough to become a myth. And whether you believe the stories or not, locals in Alsace will say, if you walk the woods at night near Christmas, and you hear footsteps crunching behind you, don't turn around, just run. As we leave you here, remember, the legends of our weird world are boundless. If you've enjoyed the stories, please share, like, and subscribe to our channel for more content. Your support enables us to keep these stories alive. Until next time, stay curious and be good, or the last thing you may hear will be the straw wrestling behind you.
Free audio post-production by alphonic.com.